I'm Jeannie Farr, and I'm from the Committee to Defend Julian Assange, or the acronym is JADC. We have organised this event, and I have one of my colleagues, fellow supporters, Joe Brack, who's our video photographer, video maker and photographer, and somewhere, Dave.
He's just gone to the toilet.
Oh right, he'll be back. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to have a 30-minute Q&A. Just to say, we were going to be 4, but unfortunately, Emmy, our chairperson, has become ill with COVID last week. She is recovering, but clearly is not able to be with us this evening. I don't know whether you, there was a short bit of her in September outside the Old Bailey hugging someone in a Guy Fawkes mask in a pink scarf. That was Emmy. She's an extraordinary woman and has been involved in the campaign for 12, right from the very beginning. Amazing person. So I'm sorry she's not able to be here, and she certainly sends her best to all of you. I'm just going to get my notes. So I'm going to say a couple of introductory things, and then I'm going to ask Joe to comment on the political ramifications of the case, and Dave will be talking as well when he arrives. And here he is. So, if I get the light right. Why is it important for us to be screening this film now? I mean, there's much in it, and I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about that, just to say one of the reasons why it's very important to be screening this film now is because Julian Assange has been silenced for the last 4 years, since 2018, when his internet access was taken away, and when visits to him and his ability to speak to the outside world were severely curtailed, and then of course brutally dragged from the embassy illegally and incarcerated in Belmarsh prison. So it's very, very important to try to make him visible again, particularly here in London, in British society, because the case is actually now, I think, in the court of public opinion. That's you and me, because I think the film shows very clearly that our institutions are not serving us, and they're certainly not serving Julian Assange, a journalist and a publisher who has tried to and has indeed told us the truth about things we have a right to know about, along with many others. But he's here, he's in London, he's our person here that we need to protect and fight for, I think. Right, I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to hand over to Joe, who is going to talk about the political ramifications, I think.
Well, I don't think it really matters whether it's Boris Johnson, Priti Patel, or whoever is going to take over the Conservative government any day now, from what I can tell. And also, I don't think it really matters if Sir Keir Starmer becomes the leader of the UK government. I think we do know that their attitudes are exactly the same, is that they believe the Americans have a right to extradite Julian from UK jurisdiction. They all believe that he is somehow a threat to national security, and that he published things, in the words of Alan Rushbridger, the former editor of The Guardian said at the Frontline Club, he published things that should not have been published. When questioned closer, he refused to give exact details and refused to admit there was in fact The Guardian journalists who published the passwords to the unredacted files that WikiLeaks had placed, and Julian and his team had done immense work in cooperation with the Americans to redact them in order not to endanger or compromise anyone currently on the ground, especially abroad. I think we have to be honest, none of these politicians and none of the judges that sit in the Magistrates Court, the High Court and possibly the Supreme Court are going to find any difference. And that's where, as Jeannie very correctly points out, the only people left are us and members of the public, independent journalists, lawyers, etc., doctors, everyone has come together to support Julian Assange and to deny the extradition to the US, and just to say thank you to everyone who has worked to this end. And as our Ecuadorian brothers and sisters have taught us recently, there is a point where you have to take to the streets if you want to get any justice, and especially if we want to maintain the freedom of speech and freedom of press in this country and in the US, where we have, as a public, the right to know what our governments are doing with our money and in our name. Thank you. David.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Is this on?
Hold it up to you.
Is this on?
Yeah,
yes,
it's
okay. I was going to talk about the breaches of due process, which were mentioned several times during that film by many people. It's a subject that I could talk about for a long, long time. It's a very, very long list. It seems to me I've only got a few minutes, so I made a last-minute decision that I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is leverage the fact that Nils Meltzer has already done that. There's a book on sale at the front called The Persecution of Julian Assange, The Trial of Julian Assange, A Story of Persecution is what it's called. And that book meticulously catalogues, from a moral and from an ethical and from a legal point of view, all the things that are important and all the things that are judicial irregularities that have happened in this case over the years, going back what is now 12 years to the beginning of the fiasco that started in Sweden. So what I'm going to do is just read a few of the things that Nils Meltzer said in his book. He didn't want to get involved in it. He first got involved in his capacity as the UN's rapporteur on torture. And when he was first asked to do that, he thought, well, there's no need for me to get involved because Julian Assange is being handled by the UK courts and the Swedish courts, and that those are courts that work in a well-known and honourable way, and there's no need for his interference in his involvement. The lawyers then went back to him and made it clear that there's an issue of torture that needs to be looked at because he was not in a good state of health. He then looked at that and decided that there is a case for him to look at, and that's when his involvement began. The book catalogues breaches of due process, and it starts with a quote from Otto Gutschneider, and that quote kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. It says, "He who sleeps in a democracy will wake up in a dictatorship." And enjoying a democracy is not enough. If you merely enjoy your democracy, you will be kind of asleep while other people are working to take more power away from you and for themselves. And this case demonstrates, as we've seen in several ways, that process is kind of unfolding before our eyes. In the sleeve notes, and I'm just going to read a quote. It's in a description of the book. It says that Meltzer's findings are explosive. Assange has faced grave and systematic due process violations, judicial bias, and manipulated evidence. He has been exposed to constant surveillance, defamation and threats, and suffered prolonged psychological torture. Meltzer's compelling investigation shows how, through secrecy, impunity, and public indifference, unchecked power has spun out of control and risks annihilating Western democracy and the rule of law. The trial of Julian Assange sets a chilling precedent. Those are the stakes that we're talking about. This is a very important case. In the course of the book, on the subject of abuses of due process, he talks about the old parable of the emperor having no clothes. And he says, so it is with the trial of Julian Assange. Although the crimes and the arbitrariness on the part of the various authorities have become increasingly blatant and obvious over the past decade, this dimension of the case has been almost completely ignored by other governments, by the established media, and by the general public. Instead, the official narrative has been obediently assimilated, repeated, and perpetuated. Assange, the rapist, the hacker, spy, and cowardly narcissist who has the blood of innocence on his hands and must finally be brought to justice. Here too, someone had to come along, take a fresh and objective look at everything, and break the spell, exclaiming, look, the emperor is naked. This, dear reader, is the purpose of this book. Now, I should say, on the day that Priti Patel decided to extradite Julian Assange, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Nils Meltzer tweeted some words that he said in a Free the Truth hearing, public meeting, about a year or two ago, when he said, how far have we sunk if we prosecute people who expose war crimes for exposing war crimes? How far have we sunk when we no longer prosecute our own war criminals because we identify more with them than we identify with the people that actually exposed those crimes? What does that tell us about us and about our governments? How far have we sunk when telling the truth becomes a crime? I think I'll leave it at that.
Yes, thank you very much. Very, very articulate. Thank you, both of you. We're welcoming questions and comments. However, if the comments go beyond a minute, then a great guillotine will come down and hit you on the head. In other words, try to be direct in either your question, which we'll try to field, or your comment. Does anyone want to start? And I can't see terribly well, so that person there just in front of me, I think 3 rows up, yeah. Do we have a roving mic? Do we have a mic? That could be.
No.
Are you talking about me or someone else?
No, you go.
Okay. Just want to know, I mean, I know that the defense team just appealed the decision. What are the times when we finally find out the final decision?
Right. The question was to do with where we are now, because clearly that ends the film ends in 2020. Priti Patel did agree, and the US now its extradition request is now on the table. The defense team, Assange's defense team, can and are cross-appealing. There were, I think, 5 points that were not covered in the initial hearing in September 2021, that process. The only 2 that were recognized by the High Court were the 2 to do with Assange's physical and mental health, and that he wouldn't be able to bear the rigorously brutal conditions of the American prison system. So they are putting forward that cross appeal. As I understand it, and Joe and Dave can expand on this, to the same court, bear in mind, the High Court. And it then is in the remit of that High Court to decide whether the appeal can go forward. Do you want to take over, Dave? No? Yeah.
There's not much I can add because as far as I know, there's no commitment to any timescale. So we don't really know how long it will take. It's safe to say that if it does go through the same steps, which is we wait now for the High Court to say whether it will hear the appeal. If the High Court says that it will hear the appeal, then we wait for them to tell us when the appeal will be. Then there will be the appeal, and then we'll wait for their decision. And then if there's an appeal after that, that same little circle will go around again with an appeal to the Supreme Court. And then if it's lost at that point, only then do the defence team have the opportunity to go to the European Court of Human Rights. If the current government doesn't close off that avenue before then, and they have been making noises about doing that.
And can I just finally add to that, the process is coming to the end. We're not talking another year. It's likely that this will all be decided in the next 6, 7, possibly 8 months. It is urgent. It is urgent that we defend this man because it's ourselves that we're defending. It's our own power as citizens that is being taken away from us. So, if anyone else? Yeah, just here? Yes, directly in front of me? Yeah.
Just wanted to know how the demonstration and the grassroots protest would affect the decision of judges for Supreme Court or any appeal.
I didn't quite catch that, sorry.
She asked how the sort of public protest and activism will affect the judges at the High Court. Shall I take that one?
Yes, please.
The most prominent regard that I believe judges have, first of all, is to their political masters. If a politician says, a Home Secretary says to a judge, I've been affected by a public protest and the legal arguments, then the judge may pay some attention. If the Daily Mail runs a headline saying that these outrages against journalism and free speech are something that cannot be stood, then a judge may consider that opinion. When it comes to people on the street and protests, I believe their attitude is not so sympathetic, but they are of a mind